Hi everyone, I'm preparing this video for Module 14, Thoughts as Adult Learners. So the first question is, what are some of the dilemmas of adult learners? I think the most important dilemmas in adult learners are to do with resources, time and money. We all have a lot of roles that we play as adults, and where we invest our time and money is very important to us. If you think about this master's program, a lot of us are doing it to improve their employment prospects. And here, something really important that I think about is the return on investment. So we have 2 years, most of us have 2 years before we complete this program. So in a way, our return on investment will not be for another 2 years. But this is something that is okay with me. In order to stay with my eyes on the prize, like they say, I try to make sure I'm motivated throughout, and this has been the case during my first semester. As an adult educator, again for question 1, I understand their dilemmas, being time and money and so on. So this is why I make sure that the quality of my work makes them feel like they have a good value for money. Question number 2 is, do you believe understanding the diverse aspects of the learning process is significant to understand the diversity of adult learners? Absolutely. I think the diversity of the learning process, first of all, I understand as all the things we've been learning actually, and we will learn in future in the program. Things like, the learning styles, different methodology, different media we can use in different learning contexts. But what I found, first of all, I have 20 years experience as an English teacher to adults, teaching English as a foreign language. And what I found that at the beginning, I didn't have as much understanding as I did now. So the first consideration is how experienced an adult educator is. So that's one thing you have to take into consideration. When I first started, I didn't know, but I knew where to get the answers. So I had colleagues I could ask for information. I knew where the books are, the resources, online resources, and so on. So it's not impossible to know the different methodology. You can always ask your colleagues, your leaders, your superiors for information. The other thing is, I noticed that different contexts require the use of, there's different levels of understanding you can use. Like in certain learning contexts, let's say teaching a group of learners from the same town, they grew up together, they do the same jobs, and I'm teaching them on test preparation or exam preparation. So the content of the course is a little limited in what we can talk about in a way. And the learners are very similar. So I can't use all of my knowledge of the learning process and the different styles of teaching and so on in that context. So that's something we can think about, is that we shouldn't use all the tools we have. We need to decide on the number of tools, on the appropriate tools, and we don't always have a really diverse, elaborate learning process. So we need to, I think as an adult educator, I like to keep it simple most of the time and only use things that I feel will add benefit to my course without overwhelming myself and my learners. Question number 3 is, how does technology influence adult education? I like to link this question 3 to question 1. because if you think about the resources, I feel that technology has really saved us a lot of time and money. And also, I think it increased access to education. If you think about our program, I've heard a lot of my classmates say that if it wasn't for the master's program being online, they wouldn't have been able to do it. And I feel the same way. So for me, I have free time and I have the money, and at the same time, I live in a university town. I live in Greenville, North Carolina, where ECU is. And still, I wouldn't feel as encouraged to do this master's program if I lived somewhere else or if I had a full-time job and so on. So I think technology has a positive influence on adult education, and this is especially true with saving us time and money. Question number 4 is, do you believe standards, credentialing, and accountability are important in the area of adult and continuing education? Yes, absolutely. For me, standards, they apply throughout the learning process and beyond. The standards in our master's program have been, for example, rubric. I find having rubric for the different assignments, setting my expectations as an adult learner, very important. First, they help me relax. So for example, I know what's required of me. So that's really very useful for me. Also, rubric, I like the way our professors have given us samples. Like if there's a writing genre we have to think about, I like that they gave us a standard rather than spending a lot of time researching what does a literature review mean, so trying to guess, to guess what the professor wants and so on. So it's really nice that we have a rubric that communicates exactly what's expected of us. This way I can spend studying time, benefiting from the learning, benefiting from the reading. So that saves a lot of time and manages expectations of the learner. So I like that. This is throughout the learning process. Credentialing and accountability are very important. If we think about like credentials, adult learners invest in them because they want to use them for employment, for further education. So having credentials are very useful. At the same time, for employers, for any other need for credentials, for patients, for people who receive our services. So you get a credential as a professional, right? So let's say you're a doctor or a nurse. It's important for your patients to know what to expect from a doctor who received their medication or passed the board exam and so on. So credentials are very important, and accountability is also important in adult educators as well. We should always remember that we have access to a lot of important and sensitive information. We have access, even as adult learners, we listen to each other, share our information. So it's important to be accountable and to know that, we can share information about each other and respect all these privacy and the sensitivity of information. Another thing with credentialing is that I feel it standardizes knowledge and it keeps it up to date. So let's say we have in continuing education in general, for example, I have a license in healthcare, in health insurance. Every year I have to maintain my license through learning 3 hours, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So that way you can keep your credentials up to date, even if you stay away from other, health insurance agents, you're still up to date. So there is the credentialing board will maintain my, in a way, my accountability as an agent. So I know what's new in health insurance, the new regulations, so that I can serve the people I work with better. The last question, question 5, is what are some of the policy issues in adult education? To be honest, I'm not, like, apart from what we've studied on this course, I'm not familiar with policies in adult education. But from what I know, I mean, adult education is a broad field. And so you have a lot of subfields within adult education with different audiences, different educators. I mean, we've mapped out the landscape of adult educators, adult learners, and so on. So I think policy issues is from the widespread spectrum of priorities and fields within adult education. Funding, organization, training, all of these things might be affected by this broadness of the field. I'm not sure if there is one already, but I mean, I would say having committees at for policy, different policies, a committee for adult literacy, a committee for higher education, just having like pooling the expertise of adult educators and having them work on more than one different committee. I think that would benefit and overcome some of the policy issues we have already. Okay, so I hope my answers were interesting to you. Thank you, and I look forward to watching your videos.